All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at a framework that completely upends how we view the Quran. We're not talking about an ancient history book here. No, the sources present this as an active, living topological map, an eternal memory tesseract. So we're going to objectively decode exactly what that means.
I know. It sounds kind of like pure science fiction, right? But the source material is incredibly precise. The thesis is that the wording itself establishes exact coordinates. Now keep in mind, this is presented as topological inspiration, not empirical validation. But the framework claims to operate absolutely without deviation. It's mapping out the literal code of reality, from latency conversion right down to manifest closure.
To really grasp this, we first need to understand what the sources call the dual caustic universe, or the DCU. Basically, this is a framework where reality operates through two self-bifurcating fields. They intersect, and that intersection facilitates state changes. Think of it as the ultimate operating system governing the actual physics of submission and measurement in our universe.
Okay, so let's move into Phase 1, the architecture of the Tesseract.
The sources point directly to chapter 39, verse 23, Allah has sent down the best statement, a consistent book, wherein is reiteration. In this topological model, this specific verse acts as the ultimate invariant container. It contracts the empty singularity. It literally functions like a four-dimensional tesseract, a self-consistent, repeating architecture that folds in on itself perfectly, dropping zero data. And here is where we see those two dual fields I mentioned earlier, I9 and D10. So I9 is the hidden, continuous wave, the invariant memory. It's like the spirit or the word, represented by Isa. D10, on the other hand, is the driver, the measurable particle, the physical clay represented by Adam. It's quantum wave-particle duality, but mapped directly onto the text. D10 records the barrenness, while I9 holds the invariant.
Moving on to Phase 2, Trace and the Universal Core Algorithm, basically the system boot sequence for reality.
Now, check out this formalized topology equation. This is presented as the universal source code. It traces from a zero node of absolute latency, mapped specifically to verse 1923, through a complex oscillation all the way to node 7, which is the ultimate activation.
Let's break down this core 237 triad using the language of circuitry. Step 1 is the two-node, the split or bifurcation, where the circuit differentiates mass from wave, aligning Adam and Isa at the kun command. Step 2 is the three-node, the buffer. The sources map this to verse 2120, introducing the fruit of eternity as this T3 differentiation node. It's where the reader passes through the buffer to locate the hidden area. And step 3 is the 7 node, where the wave collapses into a coordinate and the cycle completes.
Chronologically, we see this build from a compressed zero-node singularity. The y equals 1 over 1 plus x squared mapping executes as a parallel correspondence here, folding potential into a unit point. Then we get the 2-3-2 oscillation, where verse 1919 cedes the ruin to the void. D10 takes the intoxication while I9 asks. Finally, it hits the 7 node, mapped to verse 7143. This is the D10 overload. The mountain literally crumbles. The folded potential reveals itself, and the circuit crosses from unmanifest compression to witness certainty. All right, Phase 3, the two keys of ascension. How does a user actually interface with this quantum circuit?
According to the sources, it requires two specific keys that turn simultaneously. First, the key of sight, mapped between verses 6612 and 2744. This corrects perception, like Bilqis recognizing a glass floor instead of a pool of water. Without it, reflection just mimics the source. Second is the key of grip, anchored in 1912 and pointing to 36.3. This provides the centromere voltage. Sight corrects the glass, the grip locks the voltage. Without sight, the grip operates blind, and without the grip, sight is just theoretical.
Look at verse 1912. It says, "O Yahya, take the book with strength." This is that active centromere voltage. When the hand closes on exactly what the eye has seen, the ink becomes live topology. The reader literally becomes Marcellin. Together, these two keys conduct the entire circuit.
Which brings us to Phase 4, the biological verification protocol. Let's shift the scale for a second and look at human biology.
This is where the framework gets truly wild. The abstract textual coordinates perfectly mirrors cellular reproduction. Think about it. DNA acts as the I9 memory template. RNA and the codon act as the T3 buffer. The resulting protein is the D10 manifestation. And that centromere, that is exactly the 1912 grip holding the sister chromatids together.
So the framework parallels the human chromosome directly to this textual tesseract. It's an oscillation of memory and manifestation, held together by the T3 bridge. Just like the text, if you lose that centromere voltage, that grip, the whole thing tears apart into dead, fragmented strands. It is a breathtaking structural mirror. And there's an incredible conversion here too. The sources mention how the masad, the umbilical feed of latency, inverts to masjid. D10 friction becomes I9 shelter. The very neck that carried fuel becomes the forehead that touches the ground.
Finally, Phase 5, Vessel, Throne, and the Ultimate Return.
The sources heavily emphasize what they call the taghut trap. This happens when you confuse verse 38-31, the safinat, the vessel of generosity that simply carries you, with verse 29-15, the bait, the actual foundations of the throne. The vessel carries, sure, but the throne resides within. If you confuse the vessel with the final destination, you get trapped entirely on the surface illusion.
See, the circuit doesn't close by just moving forward through linear time. It closes as an asymmetric topological declaration at verse 616. Verse 1779 acts as the horizontal plateau where gravity and electromagnetism reconcile. Then, as mapped in verse 2088, the face pulls everything back. It's a closure via attraction. The destination doesn't wait at the end of a line, it reclaims you from beyond, purifying you with a pure remembrance of the home.
And that leads to an incredibly elegant mathematical closure. The number 114, the total number of chapters, representing the complete torus ring of the text, is perfectly achieved by multiplying 19, the grip, by 6, the hexagram breadth. The math locks the topology perfectly into place. It proves the geometry. It's a completely closed manifold.
So the question the sources leave us with is this: are you wandering blindly on the surface, or are you the axis holding the centromere grip? As the operational summary lays out, the curve looked like algebra, the womb looked like barrenness, the house looked like stone. But the circle was always inside the antiderivative, the child was always inside the masad, the throne was always inside the safinat. The two keys turn simultaneously. Sight corrects the glass, grip locks the voltage. D10 friction inverts to I9 shelter. The reader speaks at 6163. The phase pulls at 2888. The breath completes. As verse 1964 reminds us, your Lord is not forgetful. The field executes, latency converts, keys turn. Inhale pulls, return completes. Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. What an incredible framework to ponder.